In this video, we're going to look at a web development trend called Motion UI. Adding animation and motion to your site can be very cool and could add to the user experience. But we do have to be careful not to overdo it. When building your UI, you always want to also consider the UX, the user experience. Too many animations can cause your site to become sluggish and unresponsive. There are many motion UI and animation libraries out there. There's Animate.css, Velocity.js, popmotion, GSAP, three.js, Anime.js, and many others. You'll have to find the one that fits your specific needs. Today we're going to look at a couple of different ways to add animation to your site. First, we're going to use plain JavaScript without any libraries to animate some text on scroll. Then we'll use Anime.js to create some animations on load. And lastly, we'll look at JavaScript's intersection observer in combination with Anime.js to have content animate into view while we're scrolling. Before we get into the video, I've been getting a lot of requests for React content, and I do plan on doing some React videos. But until then, I wanted to give a shout out to JavaScript Mastery. He has a lot of React videos and other great content, so check out his channel. So let's get into the code. All right, so I have a project folder open here with a basic structure, a CSS folder with a main CSS file, image with an image that we're going to use, a JavaScript folder with anime.min.js, main.js, and index.html. So I will have a link in the description below for the GitHub repository so that you can download all of the source files. Let's get started on the HTML file, close the sidebar, and we're going to start with our basic boilerplate. Use emit, exclamation, enter, and we'll name this Motion UI demo. And let's go ahead and link our style sheet. And that's going to be CSS main.css. And we'll go ahead and add our JavaScript. We'll need that in a little bit. So we'll add a script with JS and main.js. And let's just go ahead and add the Anime.js now. All right, so now in our body, we'll start out with the header. So we're going to have a header with the class of main header. And within here, we'll have a span with the class of brand. And we're going to name this photo graphics. All right, within the header, we're going to have our nav links. So we'll have a UL of main nav. And then within here, we'll have li with class of nav link. And then within the link, we will have an anchor, and it's just not going to go anywhere. First one's going to be home. And then let's see, I think we're going to have 3 of these, or 4 of them total. So I'll select that, Alt-Shift down arrow 3 more times. The next one will be gallery, and then about, and contact. All right, so that's going to be it for the header. We'll go on to the main section. So we're going to have a main tag, and then within here we'll have a section with the class of title section. Within here we'll have an h1 with the class of title header. Then we're going to have a span with the class of text wrapper. So this is an animation that we're setting up here. And this is going to make a lot more sense once we get a little bit further down. So another span, the class of line 1 or line and line 1. Another span with the class of letters and letters left. In here, it's going to say photo. And then the next span, the class of letters and letters right. And this will have the rest of the name graphics. All right, and then one more span of line and line 2. This is going to be that bottom line. All right, let's go ahead and stop here and see what this looks like. And I have the live server extension installed, so we'll hit go live. All right, so it's not looking that great right now. Let's go ahead and work on some CSS. All right, in our CSS, the first thing I'm going to do is import some Google fonts. And then we're going to include some resets, margin of 0, padding of 0, and box sizing border box. In the body, we are going to set our font family. That's going to be Railway. And then sans serif as a fallback. And we're going to set the color to be an off-white because we're going to have a darker background. All right, we'll save that. Okay, it changed up a little bit. Let's go on to our main header. All right, for the main header, we're going to display flex. And we're going to position it fixed. We want the header to always stay on top. The width is going to be 100 view width. And the background color is going to be a dark gray. And we're going to add a box shadow, say 0.5 pixels, 5 pixel spread, RGBA. And we'll say 0.4. And lastly, we're going to set a Z index of 2, make sure that it's on top of everything else. All right, we'll save that. All right, we're getting there. Let's move on to our brand. So that was a main header brand. We're going to set the font size here to 1.4 rem. And if you're not familiar with rem and em units, I have a video on that. We're going to set the font weight to bold. And we'll set a padding of 2 rem. All right, save that. And we'll move on to the main nav. So that was main header, main nav. We want the width on this to be 100%. And we're going to display this as flex as well. Justify content is going to be flex end. And align items is going to be flex end. We're going to set a padding on the right of 5 rem. All right, we'll save that. Okay, getting there. Let's keep going. And we have our nav link now. So that was in the main nav and then nav link. We're going to set the list style on that to none. And then set a padding on there of 1 rem. And opacity, we're going to set this to 0 eventually, but right now I'll leave it at 1. All right, looking a little bit better. Let's keep going. Next we have our anchors. So nav link anchor. We're going to set the text decoration on that to none. And then we'll set the font size to 1.3 rem. And the color, we'll set that to the off-white. And save that. All right, that's looking better. Let's reduce that padding on the right. Let's go 2 rem. All right, that's looking better. All right, let's go ahead and style the title section. So on all of the sections, I want them to be 100 view height. I want them to take up the entire height of the window. So we're going to set a minimum height of 100 VH. On this title section specifically, we're going to set this as display flex. And then justify content, center, and align items is going to be center. We're going to set a background color on this to another shade of dark gray. And then we'll add another box shadow. And this is going to be 0, 0, 40 pixels, RGBA, 0, 0, 0, and 0.4. Save that. Okay, so we're getting there. We're going to fix this when we get to the animations in JavaScript. For now, this is okay. All right, and we've got a little bit more styling to do on the title section. So we have the title header. And here we're going to set a font weight of 300. And then a font size of 4.5 rem. All right, we have our title header and then the text wrapper. We're going to set a position on this of relative. Display this as inline block. And then we'll set a padding on the top to 0.1 rem. Padding on the, let's just do this all in one line here. Padding, we'll go 0.1 rem on the top, 0.05 rem on the right, 0.15 on the bottom. And then we'll set a line height of 1 rem. Now let's look at our title header and the line. Okay, so this is going to be position absolute. We're going to set a left on this of 0 and a top of 0 and a bottom of 0. We'll set a margin of auto. Height is going to be 3 pixels and width is going to be 100%. Background color is going to be that same off-white. And then we want to transform origin of 0.50. All right, so the transform origin has to do with our animation. The last part on this section is going to be the letters. So that was title header letters. And we'll say display inline block on that as well. And then opacity. We're going to set that to 0, but we'll again set that to 1 for now. All right, so now we've got some lines. And we'll get to the actual animation on that in just a minute. All right, so let's get back into the HTML document and we're going to add another section. Just move this over for now. And by the way, we're not going to make this responsive. I'm just showing the animation. So when we get to these smaller sizes, it's not going to look right. All right, so now we're going to add another section. And this is going to be our hero section. Within here, we're going to have an image, and the source is going to be images, portrait, and we'll just say portrait for now. Next, we're going to add some SVG text, and we're going to use the text because we want it to be a mask on top of this image. All right, so SVG, and we're going to have a height on this of 100%. Width is going to be 100%. Within here, we're going to have defs. So it's going to be the definitions, and we're going to define a mask. ID on this is going to equal mask. We're going to have an X is going to equal 0. And a Y is going to equal 0. And a width is going to equal 100%. All right, and then I forgot the height. Height is also going to equal 100%. All right, within the mask, we're going to have a rect, which is a rectangle. Again, on this, x is going to equal 0, and y is going to equal 0. Width of 100%. Let me just save all the typing and copy paste. Width of 100%. All right, and then within this, actually, we're not going to have anything within the rectangle. We can actually do this. There we go, make it look a little bit better. Whoops. Okay. After that rectangle, we're going to have some text. X on this is going to equal 50%. And the Y is going to equal 55%. We're going to have a text anchor, which is going to equal middle. And the text inside of this is going to say, take it all in. All right. And that is almost it. So after the defs, we're going to add another rectangle. So it will be the fill on this is going to equal black. X and everything else, let me just copy that. There we go. X0, Y0, width 100%, and height 100%. All right, and then after the SVG, we're going to have an H1, or I'm sorry, no, an H2, with the class of hero text, no, hero title. And we're just going to say hero title. Okay. Save that. Let's go to our CSS. And let's work on our hero section. So this, we're going to have a position here of fixed. And the top is going to be 0. And a z index is going to be -1. So it's actually going to be behind the first section. All right, then we had our hero section image, and we want the width on this to be 100%. After that, we had our hero section hero title. Hero title. Position on this is going to be absolute. Bottom is going to be 50%. Right is going to be 5%. We're going to set the font family on this to lobster. Font size, we're going to set that to 8 rem. The color, no, not columns, color is going to be that one of the off grays or light grays. Opacity, it's going to be 0, but we'll set it to 1 initially. We'll have a transform of translate X, and we're going to set it to 0 initially. And then a transition. Transition, all 800 milliseconds and ease in out. All right, let's save that, see where we're at. And we're not going to see where we're at because it's behind this initial section. If I went up here to the Z index and I made this 3, then we would see it. Okay, doesn't look like much right now. We'll get to it. We'll set that back to a -1. And we've got a little bit more to go on the CSS for this. So this is going to be the hero section SVG. And here we'll set the font family to lobster as well. We'll set the font size to 10 rem. Font weight is going to be bold. Position on this is absolute. Height of 100 view height. Top of 0 and left of 0. All right. And a couple of more sections here. The hero section SVG text. We're going to set a transition of ease in out 1 second. And a transform origin of center. And a lot of this is going to make sense once we get to that part of the animation. All right, hero section SVG rect. We're going to set a mask on the rectangles, and the URL is going to be our mask section that we created in the HTML document. So if we go back to the HTML, and we had the ID of mask right here. So it's going to use this mask, which has the text in it, on top of the image. All right, so let's keep going here. There's one more section, so we'll have the hero section SVG mask rect. So only the rectangle that is within the mask. We want the fill on that to be white. And that will actually make the text mask the image. All right, so next what we're going to do is we're going to actually add 2 sections here that are going to be basically ghost sections so that we can have some room to scroll and see that portrait image and have the graphics actually animate before we get to the next section. All right, so now as we scroll, we can actually see the mask there. Let me make this a little bit wider. So we'll have this section, it's going to animate. When we scroll down, it's going to reveal the portrait, and then it's going to have the mask on it here, and we'll have this title animate. It looks terrible right now, but it will work. All right, back in our HTML, we have one more section, and that's going to be some articles. All right, so let's go ahead and get the HTML finished up. Section is going to be article section. And then within here, we're going to have some articles. So we'll say article, class of article. Within each article, we'll have an image, and we're going to use unsplash it. So that's HTTPS unsplash it. And then you put in the parameters, the width and the height that you're looking for. So I'm going to say 200 by 200. All right, and then after the image, we want a div with the class of article body. Within that, we'll have an H3, and it's going to say article 1. And then we'll have a paragraph with some lorem, let's say 30, and that is going to be the article. So for now, I'm just going to create 3 of these. So I'm going to highlight the article, Alt-Shift down arrow 2 times. So this would be the 3rd one. And this is the 2nd. And there's the 1st. All right, we'll save that. Now if we scroll down, there's 3 articles there, and we need to style those now. All right, so we'll go back into our CSS. And let's start with the article section. And we're going to display this as grid. And if you're unfamiliar with Flexbox and grid, I have videos on those as well. So we're going to set our grid template columns. We're going to set repeat on this of 3. We want 3 columns of 1 fractional unit each. And we're going to align items start. We want a grid gap of 2 rem. We're going to set a padding of 8 rem. And background color is going to be light gray. 2727. And then a box shadow. We'll set the 0040 pixels and RGBA. All right, next we'll look at the article. So each article, we're going to display these as flex and set the background color to light gray, DA. Color of the text will be that dark gray. Set a box shadow on these. It's going to be 0010 pixels, RGBA, and we'll change that to 0.8. We want the cursor to be pointer. So when we hover over it, it has the pointer symbol. We're going to set the overflow to hidden, and the opacity is going to be 0, but we'll set it for 1. After that, we have our article image. We're going to set the width on those to 100%. And we're going to set a transition of all ease in out of 0.3 seconds. Okay, and then we're going to look at the article body H3. We're going to set the font size on this to 2 rem. Margin bottom is going to be 1 rem. And a transition of all ease in out 0.3 seconds. And then the article body. We're going to set a padding on this of 2 rem. Text align is going to be justify, and a transition of all ease in out of 0.3 seconds. Okay, need a space there. All right, and then let's go ahead and save that and see what we're looking at. Okay, so this is what it should look like. Again, we're not going to mess with the responsiveness of this site. This is just to demonstrate the animations. All right, just a couple of other things that we want to do on these articles. Let's go back down to the bottom of the CSS. We're going to add some hover. So article hover image, we want the image to transform, and we're going to scale of 1.1. We just want it to slightly zoom in. After that, we will do the article hover and the H3. We want the H3 to transform, why does it keep doing that? Translate Y negative 0.5 rem, or actually EM. We want it to use EM because the article has a different font size than the main body. And lastly, we want the article hover and the article body. This we're going to transform and translate Y again, but this time is going to be 0.5 EM the other way. All right, I'll save that. Now when we scroll down and we hover over them, let's make this bigger. And you see they get that slight movement to them when we hover. All right, perfect. All right, now we're going to work on the animation. So let's go up to the top here. So we should be finished with the HTML and CSS. So now we'll move on to the JavaScript. Well, first we'll set up our variables. We'll say let last scroll position is going to equal window dot scroll y. Let me move this over a bit. And then let title section is going to equal document dot query selector and then the title section class. And then we'll set up a title section bottom. And that's going to equal the title section dot scroll height. And then article section is going to equal document dot query selector. That's going to be our article section class. Then our article section top is going to be article section dot get bounding client rect, and then the top. So what we're trying to do here is figure out where we're at on the page when we're scrolling. Are we past a certain section? Are we before another section? This will help us determine where we're at on the page. And so we'll move on here and we'll set up another variable called scale, and that's going to initially equal 1. And then we'll set up document.add event listener scroll. So on scroll, we want to set up a function. So we'll get our current scroll position. That's going to equal window.scrollY. So how much vertically have we scrolled? And then we're going to set up an if statement with a couple of parameters here. So if our current scroll position is greater than our title section bottom, and if our scroll position is less than our article section top minus the title section bottom. So we're checking to see if we're between the title section and the article section. So what we're trying to animate here is the SVG text. So we want to know if we're between the title section and the article section. And so we'll set up another variable here, text. This is for our SVG text. It's going to equal document.querySelector, and then that was hero section, and then SVG and text. So then if the current scroll position is greater than the last scroll position, so that means we're scrolling down, then we're going to check to see if our scale is less than or equal to 64. So we're going to scale up the text to reveal the image, and we don't want it to scroll past 64. So if our scale is less than 64, then we're going to make scale equal to scale times 2. And then else, so if we're not scrolling down, that means we're scrolling up. And then we're going to check to see if our scale is greater than or equal to 2. So if it's greater than or equal to 2, then we're going to divide the scale by 2. So we're just multiplying and dividing the scale by 2, whether we're going up or down on the page. And then we're going to set our text style transform. We're going to make that equal to, we're going to use a template literal here, scale, and then we're going to pass in the variable scale. And then we'll set our last scroll position equal to our current scroll position. That way we can keep track of it. All right, let's save that and take a look. So now as we go down, we still need to get rid of that hero title. But as we scroll in, the text zooms and then reveals the image. All right, so let's go back to our CSS and go ahead and get rid of all of the opacity on all those items that we left at 1. We'll change them all to 0. Hero section, title. I think there was one more. Yep, articles. That should be it. Actually, for the hero section, the image should have been the height, not the width. Let's try that again. That looks much better. All right, so now we need to animate the title. This title is going to come across from the right side to the left. All right, so we'll go back to our JavaScript here, and we're going to add another variable, call it x, and that's going to equal a -1 to start out with. As we're going to be moving from right to left, so that would be negative numbers. All right, so add another if statement, and we're going to check again to see where we're at. So we're going to see scroll position is greater than title section body times 1.6. So we want to know that we're a little more than halfway through the first blank section. We've had those 2 blank sections. So halfway through that first one, right after we zoom, we want that title to come across. And then also check to see if our scroll position is less than article section top. So as long as we are before the article section. So now we're going to add another variable. Title is going to equal document.querySelector, and that's going to be the hero section class and then the hero title class. And we'll say if the current scroll position is greater than the last scroll position. So we're scrolling down. If x is greater than or equal to -150, so we want it to ultimately go 150% to the left. And so if it's less, or if it's greater than that, then we're going to say x equals x times 1.5. Else here, so that means we're scrolling up. We're going to check to see if x is less than or equal to a -1.5. And if it is, then we'll say x equals x divided by 1.5. So again, here we're just multiplying and dividing by 1.5, dependent on whether we're scrolling up or down. So if we're scrolling down, the hero title is going to go to the left. If we're scrolling up, it's going to go back to the right. And then we're going to set our title style and the transform to a template string, translate x, and then we'll pass in here the x variable. And then we'll also set the title style opacity to 1. And then else. So if we're not within the scroll parameters that we're looking for, if we're outside of those, then we want to get the title again. So we'll get the variable title equals document query selector, and then the hero section, hero title. And so again, if we're outside of that section, then we want to set the title style opacity to 0. All right, let's save that and check it out. Now we're about halfway through, it zooms in, and then there's the hero title, and it's not scrolling to the left. So let's see, what did I miss? Oh yeah, okay, I see. In the translate X, we need to add the % symbol, because this is in percentages. We'll save that, try it again, refresh. Make this a little bit bigger. All right, it zooms in, and there's the title. And we could make the font a little bit bigger, but that looks pretty good. All right, so now let's work on the top section. We'll work on the header and then this main graphic here. All right, so here we'll get a document query selector all. We're going to select all of the nav links. And then we'll do a for each on that since it returns an array. And we'll say link and then arrow function. And then we'll say link.add event listener and then mouse over and another arrow function. So what we're setting up here is when we hover over the links, we want to have a little bit of an animation. So here's where we're going to use Anime.js. So we'll set up anime and it takes an object. So we'll set the target equals the link and then we're going to set up some keyframes, and that takes an array. Within the array, we'll have an object that is translate y. And we'll set this up to a -2 pixels. And then we're going to create multiple keyframes. So Alt-Shift down arrow, I'm just going to duplicate that. And then we'll just put some random numbers in here. We want it to move up and down. Let's see, -2, 4, 0, 2, -4, and 0. All right, and then after keyframes, we're going to set the duration, and we'll set that to 400 milliseconds. And then we'll set the easing to ease in out expo. And just check out the documentation on Anime.js. It's very detailed. All right, so we'll save that. And I'm going to go ahead and set the opacity back to 1 on the nav links, just so that we can see them. And now when we hover over, they just have a little bit of a jiggle. All right, I'm going to set this back to 0, and we're going to animate that in next. I'll go back to our JavaScript. And we're going to set up our header navigation now. So we'll say anime.timeline. So we're going to set up a timeline for all of the different elements. And then we'll use add to add each element. The add takes in our object here. So targets is going to equal the .main header. Opacity is going to go from 0 to 1. So we use an array here, say 0 and 1. And then the translate y is going to be go from a -5 rem to 0. And then we'll set the easing to spring. And I got this from the documentation, so you can just check that out. And then we'll set the duration to 300 milliseconds. So the timeline works in order. So it will do this first animation here, and it won't move on to the next animation until the first one has finished. All right, so let's save that and check it out. So we hit refresh, and you see that the header kind of comes down, bounces a little bit. So we're going to add our next animation. So I'm just going to copy this, and we'll add another one. So this one is going to have multiple targets, so we can set an array here. And so the first one will be the nav link. And then the second is going to be the brand. Opacity 0 to 1, that's good. Translate y, we'll set that to -2 rem and 0. Spring is fine, and we'll set the duration to 500 milliseconds. Now it's going to run these in order, one after the other. So after our object and add, we can set a second parameter, and that's going to be our delay. So we're actually going to set a negative delay because we want this second animation to actually begin before the first one ends. So we can use -= and then put in the time frame. So we'll say 800 milliseconds. All right, let's save this and check it out. Hit refresh again. Header comes in, and then the links come in as well as the brand. All right, so let's add another animation after this one. We'll just copy this add. We'll copy this add block, and in the targets, this time it's just going to be a single target. That's going to be our title header, and then the lines. On this, we'll set the opacity from 0.5 to 1. And then instead of translate y, we're going to have scale x. and we're going to start at 0 and go to 1. So remember, in our CSS, we set our transform origin to center. So this is going to make the line grow from the middle. We'll set the easing to ease in out expo, and the duration will be 700 milliseconds. And then our delay, we'll set that to 1400. All right, we'll save that and check it out, refresh again. And there you see it grows from the middle. All right, we'll set up the next animation in the timeline. All right, this one will change the duration to 600. Again, we're targeting the lines. And we're going to set a translate Y this time. There's two lines here. One's going to go up and the other one's going to go down. So we'll set up a function here. And the function is going to return a negative or a positive number, basically. We want one to go negative and the other one to go positive. So we'll say negative 0.265 plus 0.265 times 2 times the index. And then we need to add the EM. And so again, what this is going to do is one's going to be a negative and the other is going to be positive. And we'll set our delay to 700 milliseconds. We'll save that and refresh. All right, so now we hit refresh. You see the lines come in and then one goes up, the other goes down. So now we'll work on the text that's in the middle. All right, so we'll add another animation here. And this time we're going to target the letters left. And I'm going to just copy and paste some of this from up here because we want the opacity and translate Y. It's a little bit different. All right, so opacity 1 to 0 is fine. Translate Y, we'll change that to translate X. And then we're going to start with a 0.65 EM to 0.15 EM. Spring, we'll change that to ease out expo. And then the duration is going to be 600 milliseconds. And the delay we'll set to 300. All right, refresh. All right, you see it fades in and moves from the right to the left a little bit. And now let's work on the other side. Add one more animation. All right, so this one's going to be for letters right. And we'll just take these translate X numbers and make them negative. And we'll change the delay to 600 milliseconds. We'll save that and refresh. And there we go. Let me zoom in a bit so that you can see it better. All right, I'm going to zoom back out. We'll scroll down. So now we have the first section, the second section done. We just have to work on the article section now. All right, we'll set up our variables. So we're going to use the intersection observer here. So we'll set up our observer variable, and then we'll set a constant articles equals array.from document.query selector all. And then we're going to look for the articles. So that's going to be our array of articles. And then we're going to set up an options constant here. This is going to set our threshold, and we're going to set it to 0.5. So if you look at the documentation for the intersection observer, it takes several different options. The threshold is going to make it only start when we're halfway through the target that we're looking for. So next we'll set up our current. We want to know which one that we're on, and we're going to start that at a -1. So now we'll set our observer equal to a new intersection observer. And the intersection observer takes a function. So we're going to say entries and then arrow function. And then we'll say entries.forEach. And we'll get each entry. And then another arrow function. And then we'll say if entry.intersection ratio is greater than 0.5. So if we're at least halfway through the intersection of the target, then we'll set up another constant here of new current. It's going to equal articles.indexOf and then entry.target. So we're getting our current target index. And then we'll say if new current is greater than current. So again, we're starting current at -1. So our first article's index is going to be 0. So 0 is greater than -1. So now we'll set up our animation. So we'll say anime and then set up our object. We'll have targets going to equal entry.target. And then our opacity, we'll say start from 0 to 1. And then translate Y, we'll set that to 20 rem. And then to 0. So it's going to come from the bottom and go up. And we'll set easing to the spring. We'll set duration to 800 milliseconds. And then we'll set our current equal to the new current. And that way we can keep track of which one we're on. And then we'll say observer.unobserve entry.target. So once we have completed the animation on this particular target, we want to unobserve it. All right, and so then we'll pass in our options. All right, so then we'll set up document.querySelectorAll. And we'll look for the articles and then another for each. And we'll say article arrow function. And then we'll call the observer.observe. And then pass in the article. All right, we'll save that and refresh. All right, now as we come up into the article section, they should bounce in from the bottom. All right, refresh it, we'll try it again. I'll go a little bit slower. And there we go. All right, so let's add a few more articles just so that we can see the effect a little bit better. So we'll go back to the HTML here, and we'll just copy these 3 articles. Let me select all of them. Alt-Shift down arrow 2 times. All right, then we'll rename these. Article 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, and then there's the 3, 2, and 1. All right, refresh and save. And let's scroll down. And you should see each row come in on its own and not all of them at the same time. There's that row, next row, and the next row. And now notice that they all have the exact same picture. So I'll show you a little trick here. So if we go back to the HTML, For the unsplash it, if we change in the URL, if we change the sizes to something unique to each one, then we'll have a unique picture. So if we just change each one by 1 pixel, it's not going to change anything in our CSS. It's not going to throw anything off. So we'll change each one so that they are all unique. All right, and we'll save that and refresh. And now we have different pictures. We'll try this one more time. Let's refresh and then scroll down. All right, that's looking good. And we have our hover effect, our bouncing header links. All right, so there's a lot that you can do with Motion UI. Just again, be careful not to add too much or overdo it. If my videos have helped you in any way and you have the means to do so, help me out on Patreon. If you liked this video, a thumbs up is appreciated. I upload new content every week, so hit subscribe and the bell to get notified. I'm also on social media at CodeStacker. Thanks for watching.